Good morning, Nicole. I hope you're having a good time at DECA. This is for you. Solving trig equations. Now, notice we are solving equations just like you solved equations in algebra. Okay? Now, solving trig equations is not difficult. You do, in many cases, have to have a calculator. So, this one, however, is not going to require a calculator. Now, I want you to notice here at first, what the author has done is the author is taking you through steps. When it's time for you to do these on your own, you're not going to think, okay, step one, you're going to, it's just going to come natural for you. This is how I'm going to do it. Because what we're going to do is we're going to just put together a lot of the stuff that you've already learned. All right, so let's take a look here. Consider this trig equation. Secant theta equals 2 root 3 over 3. The plan outlined below is the process that you will perform when solving a trig equation of this form. We are looking for two values of theta such that, now notice this one's working in degrees, so you're going to want your answers in degrees without using a calculator. Now notice this is two values of theta. If you know the secant, what else do you automatically know? The cosine. This number is positive, so cosine is positive. Oh my gosh, where is cosine positive? So you're going to have two answers. You're going to have an answer in quadrant 1 and an answer in quadrant 4. Okay? That's why it tells you two answers. Now, here we go. If necessary, rewrite the equation in terms of sine, cosine, or tangent. Isn't that what I've told you to do all along? Okay. If you know what the secant is, let's figure out what the cosine is. What is the cosine? Yep. It said not to use a calculator. You look at that cosine and think, well, I don't know anything about that. Let's rationalize it. If you rationalize it, what are you going to have to do? What do you get? 3 root 3 over 6, which simplifies to root 3 over 2. Oh my goodness. You know. You know that. You know that. You're thinking, do I? You just took your third quiz on it. You better know it. Now, look at number 2. Make a note of the two possible quadrants of termination for theta based on the sine of theta. If cosine is positive, because that's a positive number, what quadrants could this angle terminate in? 1 and 4. Now, here's the way I want you to think through this. I want you to just ignore this. Okay. We've got cosine theta equals root 3 over 2. Well, you're not really ignoring it. I'm just going to have you think through it in a different way, maybe. You know how when you have 2x equals 6, 2x equals 6, how do you get rid of the 2? Divide by 2. And why do you choose division? Because multiplying by 2 and dividing by 2 are inverse functions. Oh, inverse. Inverse functions. The inverse function of adding is subtracting. The inverse function of squaring something is square rooting something. The inverse function of cosine is cosine inverse. Reciprocal is secant. Inverse is cosine inverse, which is on your calculator. It's the blue version of the cosine button. Now, you don't need it for this one, though, because this one said to do it without a calculator. I just want to make sure you know where that button is, and I think we've used it a little bit, haven't we? So, on a problem like this, you don't need to use it. Here's what I want you to think. In quadrant 1, what angle has a cosine of square root 3 over 2? 30 degrees. 30 degrees. Now, that's one of your answers because we said the angle's in quadrant 1 or quadrant 4. So theta will equal 30 degrees, or, now you said it could be in quadrant 1 or quadrant 4, right? If it's in quadrant 4, what is its reference angle? Reference angle. Has to have the same reference angle. So how can I figure out this angle right here? Now we're in degrees, okay? 360 minus 30. There are your angles. There are your answers right there. Done. We found two angles that have a secant of 2 root 3 over 3. So we just solved that equation. Dun, 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 dun. Next page. You got to have a calculator on this one because you are told that the sine of the angle is 0.735, and I'm pretty sure none of us have memorized that. Oh, those of you who have an Android phone, you do know that there is a TI-84 app, or well, it might not be, anyway, it's free. You can just get it on your phone. And on the iPhone, you can find, I think it's called Calculator X84. It's free too. But that's something, so you can actually get them on your calculator for nothing. You can buy an app for $5 on the iPhone that gives you this screen, but the one you can get for free, I think it's Calculator X84, something like that. Okay, that is a TI-84. It just looks a little bit different on the screen, but it is a graphing calculator. So just so you know. Solve each of the following trig equations and find two values for theta, but notice this is all we're going right here. Give your answers to the nearest thousandth of a degree. When you are solving these equations, the first thing you have to do is decide what quadrant is my answer in. You have to do that first. You know what? I'm going to make that a little bigger because I'm going to actually use it. The sine of this angle is positive. What quadrants then could that angle terminate in if the sine is positive? 1 and 2. So I know that I'm here and here. I'm going to find an answer in each of those quadrants. You with me? Now I just got to find them. Sine of theta equals, how do I undo sine? Sine inverse. So what you're going to do is you're going to sine inverse both sides. Anybody get that? What quadrant's that angle in? 1. Do I want an angle in quadrant 1 is one of my answers. So that's one of my answers. 47.307 degrees is one of my answers. Where's the other answer? Quadrant 2. What is the reference angle? You betcha. The answer to that's a good question. Do you have to store that answer? You certainly can. You certainly can store it. Since we're going out 3 decimal places, it would only make a difference probably in that last place. So I'm not going to fuss at you about it because we don't have to use those numbers to go anywhere else. So you can store it or not. It's up to you. Now, if I was using those to do other things, I would tell you definitely store it. How do I find that red angle? Now, see on your calculator, can't you just do 180 minus answer? So we don't even really have to store it. We can do 180 minus answer since we're using it immediately. So what's my other angle? There are your two angles right there. So let's just do use answer as much as we can. Do you need to show you're doing 180 minus? No, as long as you have shown this picture. Because this picture should make it obvious that you're doing 180 minus. Okay, I can give you time to write because I see a couple of you still writing, and then we'll go on to the second one. All right, here we go. Cosine of theta is negative 0.482. What quadrants should we be in? 2 and 3, because cosine is negative in quadrants 2 and 3. How do I figure out theta? What inverse? Cosine inverse. Now listen, I want you to write this down. I want you to write. Okay. Go to your calculator. Is that an angle in one of the quadrants that I am trying to find? Yes. So this is one of my answers right here. That's 118.816 degrees. Now, this is why it's really important for you to draw the picture, what we're going to do next. How in the world do I find an angle in quadrant 3 that has that same cosine? I'm sorry? The reference angle. What is the reference angle? Do 180 minus answer. So what do I do with that reference angle? How come? In quadrant 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw, I'm going to draw that reference angle into quadrant 3, and I'm going to find this angle right here. Do you have the 61.183 thing still on your screen? How can you just figure out the answer then? Plus 180. Those reference angles are going to be really important here. You have any questions so far? Are you ready to go on? Third one. Cosecant theta is negative 1.235. What do I know? Anything? Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So if cosecant is negative, then I know what do I know about the sine? Sine is negative. What quadrants have a negative sign? 3 and 4. So I'm going to have to find an angle in quadrant 3 and an angle in quadrant 4. You do not have an inverse cosecant button, but you do have a sine inverse button. So I'm going to have to convert this to sine. I do not have a choice. What is the sine of theta? Yeah, that's the sine of theta. So how do I find theta? Go to your calculator. Did anybody get that? Now, is that one of the answers? No, that is not one of the answers. How do I use that to get a positive angle measure, because it said 0 to 360 in quadrants 3 and 4? What is this? What's this? Let's just talk about the 54.068. That's your reference angle. Because if you graphed this angle, that says to go 54 degrees in what direction? The clockwise direction. That gives you an angle in quadrant 4, but it's not the right name. We're going to be finding, essentially, we're going to be finding coterminal angles to that one. Okay. The reference angle is 54.068. So, what's the measure of that angle right there? That's it. It's 360 minus 54.068. You getting that for one of them? How do I find an angle in quadrant 3 that has this sign? Not 360. No, what quadrant am I in? What do I got to deal with? I got to deal with the reference angle. I got to put the reference angle in quadrant 3. 54.068. So how do I find this angle right here? 180 plus. Good. 180 plus 54.068. Bless you. Are you getting this? Next page. Are we on the next page, or we need to have one more on that box? We got one more there. Okay. Tangent. All right, here we go. Tangent is negative. What quadrants have a negative tangent? 2 and 4. I got to come up with an angle in quadrant 2 and an angle in quadrant 4. All right, then I can do that. How do I get theta? Tangent inverse. So we're going to do theta equals tangent inverse of, go to your calculator. Last page, please put your calculator in radian mode. You're going to do exactly what we've done already. You're just going to have it in a different mode. And you're not going to put a degree symbol because your angles are going to be in radians. Here we go. Solve each of the following trig equations, finding 2 values for theta if theta is between 0 and 2 pi. Give your answers to the nearest thousandth of a radian. Show your work including your graphical analysis. Folks, the graphical analysis is this. That's the graphical analysis that I want to see. Let's talk about your quadrants. What quadrants do we have to be in order for that equation to be true? Why 2 and 3? Good, because cosine is negative. How do I solve the equation? Cosine inverse. So theta equals cosine inverse of now it's going to look like you're getting weird answers, but it's because you're in radian mode, so don't worry about it. Did you get that? What quadrant is that in? Right down there. This doesn't have to be great big. I'm just making it great big. Radians. On your calculator, do pi divided by 2. About 1.57. Okay. Pi is about 3.14, right? What's 3 pi divided by 2? 4.71. 2 pi is what, 6.28? Roughly. Now you can decide what angle or what quadrant that angle's in. 2.967 is in what quadrant? 2. Did I want an angle in quadrant 2? Woohoo! That's one of my answers then. That is 2.967 radians. How do I find the angle in quadrant 3? Reference angle, yep. And I heard subtract. How are you going to find that reference angle? Pi minus, do pi minus. You getting that? Let's throw that in quadrant 3 because that's the quadrant I need. 0.175. I need this angle right here. Add pi to that. Good. That's what I got. Anybody else? Do you have questions so far? One more. One more. Can I erase? Okay. Cotangent. What quadrants is cotangent positive in? Cotangent's positive in 1 and 3 because tangent is positive in 1 and 3. Good. I don't have a cotangent inverse button, but I do have a tangent inverse button. So the tangent of theta is 1 over this. Don't put that on your calculator. Don't do 1 divided by 5.671 and figure out what that is. Just leave it like that. How do I get theta? So theta equals tangent inverse of, go to your calculator. Is that an angle in quadrant 1? You bet your boots it is. So that's one of my answers. Now I need an angle in quadrant 3. How am I going to find an angle in quadrant 3? Good. You're going to use that reference angle. You're going to put that reference angle in quadrant 3, 0.175. And we want that angle right there. What do I do? No, we don't add 180 because we're in radians. What do? Add pi. No degree, stand it, no degree. Am I sure that angle's in quadrant 3? 3.316. Ha ha, there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, when you solve a trig equation, what's the first thing you got to decide? What quadrant you're going to be in. What's the next thing you do? You do an inverse trig function. Yep. Then you decide, did that inverse trig function give me an angle where I wanted it to be? If it did, great, go for it. If it didn't, think about that as a reference angle, okay? Now, let me think for just a minute because, let me think. There's one time that can be a problem, and I did not see one on here. So I'm going to play with this for just a minute.